Okay, so I wanted to explain mainly for myself, but also so you maybe you can have some input if you do have any. That'd be great. So after implementing the edit feature on the system, so you could select a component and possibly add or change some variations. Um, Nested components are next to impossible to implement in a sane way using this system. So when you select an element or a component that you're editing, you're generally going to be selecting the top level because any elements below it are generally like divs, which have no contextual meaning. When you look at them, it doesn't inherently mean anything that, and you would just have a lot of buttons everywhere that just says edit, 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 and you think, what the heck's going on? Ideally, you want to be able to like click on like the top level, and it would show all the possible options that you could change some like some attributes or whatever. So here, for example, this dialog has lots of possible attributes that you can make it large, you can make it full screen at a certain size, but you can't select that. I mean, if you the only way that you would do it would be to have a tree view. So you have a sidebar that would show a tree of the element that you've clicked. Basically, you're just looking at like HTML, which a lot of them actually do, like Figma. Everything does this because they allow the user to modify elements directly. But that's not very useful because we basically want to prevent breakage. We don't want them to break it, but we can allow them, we give them the freedom to modify it significantly, so enough, but not break it. That was the goal. So let's look at it. You just can't do it. There's so many reasons why this sucks. So I kind of had to imagine something else. So basically the only way to do this is to flatten it. So we have a description of the child element. So we have the model dialog, and then we have some sensible defaults. So this, when you create this element, it will render the child elements, and in this case, it's not a section, meaning like the user can't add or remove uh, children of this particular component. Uh, it's required. Basically, this model needs a dialogue, otherwise it doesn't work. Options are options that allow, so when we click on the edit button for the dialogue on the page, the sidebar comes in or the pop-up pops up and it shows possible options that we can modify. So they can input that will have like an accessibility section, and they can input a text input. The display of the widgets that handle the editing of this thing is really up to Dooksa how it's done, and that's the beauty of Dooksa, is that the data doesn't actually dictate how it's displayed. It's more like the data is available for the system to use in however way they want. So the styles, yeah. So you have a styles tab, style section, and they can change the units and kind of make it look unique. Well, this one's about this instance. It's not global. You would have possibly a global edit button to change all of them, but this is just this instance, which is kind of cool. All right, so how does it work when you want to edit, say, the overall model, including the children? So in this case, we have the model. that have different options, size and full screen, and these are the different options. So basically, when you click on the model to edit, it gathers all of the options of the child elements that are attached and displays them. So we can choose. These will all come up as one list, as underneath the the model. It's only until you get to the allowed children where this particular element is actually a section. So these are the nice defaults, but basically when you install it, you kind of see something that looks presentable, and then they are allowed to be added and removed. So here, this is where it kind of like stops looking down the tree and gathering all the options for all of the components, because it's too deep. Like we don't actually know what's going to be there, right? And normally, if it's a container, that's, you know, because it could be any other component, that component should be looking after itself. And sections you are editable. So all components within a section are clearly identified because they have a root element. So we can have a look at, so like footer, for example, no, header. So here we have an example of a button with using a modify variant. So we can use the default component. Basically, we just take in the defaults, and we can also display a modification of that component. So we have one instance. Let's have a look at the button. So the button has allowable text and icon, for example. It has text by default. These are the default classes. And we have some options. So variant, sorry. And then we have, by default, we're just going to choose the close. And the close will append that class to this attribute. So when we go, and so what's cool about that is that it didn't copy it. It hasn't made a different, like, like it didn't actually edit anything. It's just choosing different overrides. And so if you do want to edit the button itself, you can edit, and it will show all the options as a general button, and they can change the variant if they really want. And so on. I'm getting and also there's another last thing here. So we can actually have extended options. So say the header can have extended options. So inherited options that say can have all the background class options, for example. So we can add gradient backgrounds. We can add just backgrounds in general. And so that these are like often utility classes. So your components don't have to copy paste those utility classes across. They can just allow it to be extendable, which is, I feel like this is actually the pattern or only pattern that I can literally use for this system.